Donald Trump has spent a lot of time criticizing you. You told me a couple years ago on air that you were afraid of what Trump could theoretically do if he ever were returned to the White House. How do you feel now?
Yeah, it's possible. Do I think he's going to start arresting comedians? I don't.
No, it's not that I've gotten old. It's that your ideas are stupid. Okay?
Common sense is still common sense.
Yes, common sense is common sense, and I'm going to call it out wherever it is on the spectrum.
Bill Maher just torched CNN without even raising his voice. As the network spiraled into a familiar frenzy over Trump, echoing 2016 all over again, Maher sat back, sipped his metaphorical truth tea, and calmly called out the spectacle for what it truly was: a desperate rating stunt disguised as journalism. If you thought CNN had already hit peak meltdown, wait until you hear what Maher said to their face. Spoiler alert, he didn't pull any punches.
I'm not going to chase every rabbit down the hole like I did the first term. That's what I mean about he's not going to get my mind. He's a kooky guy who says a lot of kooky things, and I'm just not going to pre-hate anything. I'm just going to hope for the best, and then when something serious happens, I'll comment on that.
Right from the start, Maher goes on the offensive, calm, composed, but cutting. He sets the tone early, making it clear he's not here to sensationalize every Trump headline like CNN. While the network spirals into panic over every Trump soundbite, Maher refuses to play along. He calls out the theatrics for what they are, manufactured outrage dressed up as journalism, and he does it live, without flinching. Sensing that Maher wasn't in the mood for another round of Trump derangement syndrome, the host quickly pivoted the conversation to Biden.
I'm writing an election book, and one of the things I just stumbled on was a monologue you gave in October 2023, in which you warned the Democratic Party of Ruth Bader Biden. You were saying the American people think he's too old. You're worried about this. You had a great line about it doesn't matter if he's a national treasure and has done great things. If you got on an airplane and you heard that Buzz Aldrin was the pilot, you'd get off. I'm sorry for botching your very funny joke. But they didn't listen to you, but you were proven correct.
Bill Maher remains one of the sharpest comedians and most brutally honest voices in American media. Just watch as he gets an entire CNN panel to abruptly shift gears and start talking about Biden, a pivot that speaks volumes. But that was only the beginning. While most Democrats fell in line, insisting Biden was fully fit to run, Maher stood almost alone on the left, warning that keeping Biden on the ticket could spell disaster. And now, that warning has aged like milk in the sun. The same voices that once dismissed him are now scrambling to rewrite history, but Maher's receipts are loud, clear, and impossible to ignore.
And I felt I had standing to make that case because I had for so many years been the only person I know on television who was consistently railing against ageism. I have been saying for years, ageism is the last allowable prejudice that we can have in this country. You can always do the age jokes. You can always rail on people for being too old. And it was, as I said, a case-by-case basis. Some people at 70 act like they're 100 years old, and some people are like 40-year-olds. But this was a case, okay, where Biden was too old. Having made that case that it's a case-by-case basis, I was now saying, yes, some of those cases are that the person just is too old for the job. And he was going to be, much like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, someone who was seen in history as one who stayed at the fair too long and cost his party dearly. And he did.
This hits especially hard given that CNN was one of the loudest voices pushing the ageism narrative. Anyone who questioned Biden's fitness was instantly branded discriminatory and shut down with cries of bias. So when Bill Maher looked them straight in the eye and unapologetically stood by his criticism of Biden, it was nothing short of epic. It was a masterclass in courage, tearing the mask off CNN's glaring hypocrisy. They weaponized ageism to protect Biden, and now they're choking on their own double standard. Once the host realized Maher wasn't backing down and the heat was getting too real, he quickly bailed and steered the conversation back to Trump.
Spent a lot of time criticizing you. You told me a couple years ago on air that you were afraid of what Trump could theoretically do if he ever were returned to the White House. How do you feel now?
Yeah, it's possible. Do I think he's going to start arresting comedians? I don't, but it's possible. And look, anything's possible with this guy. I'll put it this way. When George Bush was in the White House, it never even entered my mind. Never entered my mind that I couldn't say whatever I wanted to say without repercussions. And that's one of the great things about living in America. And we take America for granted and that kind of stuff, and maybe we can't anymore. So we'll see. But am I going to let it affect what I do? No. I mean, the day I feel like I can't say what I want without going to Guantanamo Bay, I'll just leave.
Jake Tapper clearly expected Maher to launch into a fiery anti-Trump rant, matching the energy he'd just aimed at Biden. But Maher didn't take the bait. Instead of parroting the media's narrative, he coolly sidestepped the setup and dropped a truth bomb. He doesn't see Trump as the cartoon villain CNN and MSNBC constantly portray. The room went still. Maher wasn't there to pander. He was there to speak the uncomfortable truth no one else had the guts to say.
I want to ask you before you go, and congratulations again on the special, but there's talk promulgated by you about maybe you quitting the HBO show, about maybe not touring anymore. Well, you said something to Jane Fonda about thinking about that. Where are you in your career? You still got a lot of good stand-up, a lot of good jokes in you, right? Like, tell us what's next.
Okay. I am stopping doing stand-up just because I'm tired of touring. Just because I've been doing it for 40 years. I love it. Look, I love nothing more than being on stage somewhere telling jokes to strangers. It's been my entire life. It's been the most consistent thing in my life.
Tapper just wouldn't let up, once again tossing out bait, hoping Maher would take the hook and spiral into an anti-Trump meltdown. This time, the setup was a loaded question. Would Maher consider quitting comedy if Trump returned to power and threatened free speech? But Maher, staying true to himself, didn't flinch. Calmly and confidently, he shut it down. If he ever walks away from stand-up, it won't be because of fear or politics. It'll be because after more than 4 decades on the stage, he's simply ready to call it a career. No theatrics, no victimhood, just a seasoned veteran exiting on his own terms.
Training for 40 years. I need a break, and I'm tired of the travel. I'm tired of dragging my ass out of bed on Saturday morning to go to some place after I worked so hard on Real Time all week. Maybe I'll go back to it, but I have a podcast, I have a television show. I'm not retiring, and I don't know where this started about I'm getting rid of Real Time. They're gonna have to drag me off of that show. What I was saying was that I didn't want to do another Trump term. Not just because I don't think it's going to be possibly a great time for America, maybe, again, not going to pre-hate anything, but because I've already done all the jokes.
This moment could be a wake-up call for CNN. Maybe, just maybe, it's time they ease up on the nonstop preemptive outrage and let the facts do the talking. After years of labeling Trump everything from a fascist to the second coming of Hitler, what's left in the insult arsenal? They've maxed out the outrage meter, hurled every accusation possible, and yet half the country has tuned them out. At some point, constant hysteria becomes nothing more than white noise instead of leaping into every headline with breathless condemnation. Perhaps it's time to pause, wait for something real, and respond with credibility instead of desperation. Maher's approach proves that calm honesty can hit harder than overblown theatrics.
Democrats sometimes can take it too far, or I would categorize liberal as different than woke. Woke, which started out as a good thing, alert to injustice, who could be against that, but it became sort of an eye roll because they love diversity except of ideas. And that's not really where we should be. I mean, they have a trail of very bad ideas, I would think, in wokeness.
What makes this even more powerful is that Maher is saying it all directly to the CNN host, right to his face, live on air. He's not whispering behind the scenes or softening his words. He's calling out the entire game in real time. And The uncomfortable truth? Mainstream media runs on ratings, and ratings thrive on outrage. Negative Trump coverage sells. It's media gold. That's why networks like CNN keep hammering him, not always out of principle, but out of fear that ignoring him might tank their viewership. But Maher, he couldn't care less about ratings. He's not chasing clicks, feeding the algorithm, or trying to win applause from any particular side. That's exactly why people across the political spectrum are tuning in. He's blunt, unfiltered, and willing to set fire to the narrative right as it's being spun. In a media landscape full of echo chambers and performative outrage, Bill Maher stands out as a rare voice of reason.
Response when people tell you that, and you must hear this a lot, that they get that you're one of their primary sources of information.
Flattered, and as it should be, is my response. I feel like people are looking for something that is not slanted. I mean, I certainly have lost fans over the years because I don't say the things that please people all the time, but that's my ultimate bond with the audience. When I lose people, it's like, okay, well, you were never meant to be with me in the first place.
Yeah.
We can't have a relationship.
No Bill Maher interview would be complete without him lighting up the left's obsession with wokeness, and true to form, he didn't hold back. Maher has long warned that the Democratic Party's fixation on identity politics, cancel culture, and performative virtue signaling is driving everyday Americans away. And let's be honest, that ideological overreach played a major role in their humiliating showing last November.
Define wokeness, because I hear people use the term all the time, and it means something different to everybody.
Well, again, I think it's this collection of ideas that are not building on liberalism, but very often undoing it. I mean, 5 years ago, Abraham Lincoln was not a controversial figure among liberals. We liked him. Now they take his name off schools and tear down his statues. Really? Lincoln isn't good enough for you? 5-10 years ago, bedrock liberalism was we are striving to be a colorblind society where we don't see race. Of course, we see it, but it doesn't matter. That's not what woke is. Woke is something very different. It's identity politics. We see it all the time. It's always the most important thing. I don't think that's liberalism. I mean, I could mention so many issues like that. I remember doing that show on HBO, Comic Relief for the Homeless. And the idea then, again, among liberals, I thought was, for the sake of compassion, can we get these people off the street so they have a roof over their heads? And now it's like, how dare you try to move the homeless? This is where they live.
Absolutely. Maher made a crucial point, one that too many on the left still refuse to confront. Wokeness is becoming the undoing of liberalism. He draws a clear and necessary line between classic liberal values and the toxic strain of woke ideology that's overtaken much of today's cultural and political discourse. And he's doing it for the younger generation, to make sure they don't confuse the two, because they are not the same.
No, it's not that I've gotten old, it's that your ideas are stupid, okay?
Common sense is still common sense.
Yes, common sense is common sense, and I'm going to call it out wherever it is on the spectrum.
Exactly. Common sense is just that, common sense. But somehow the woke media missed that memo. Instead of grounding their reporting in logic, facts, and fairness, they chase whatever trendy, performative narrative will rack up the most clicks, likes, and outrage-fueled attention. Truth? That's not the goal. They're addicted to engagement.